Hey everyone, I am Mel from Cardstack Concoctions. Welcome to my 8x8 memory box tutorial. I'm so glad you guys came to join me. Now this tutorial is for a very basic memory box. If you watched my 12x12 memory box video, you will remember there was a small flap that kind of came down on the front. We're not going to do that piece. That does add a complication level to your box that you're going to be making, and I wanted to keep this one simple and basic so anybody of any skill level can do this. What you're seeing here in front of you is just a few of the supplies, and I will be going through all of that with you today, as well as some of the basic beginning preparation construction things. Then in my second video, I will actually do the construction of the box itself, and then in the third video, we will be decorating the box. So let's go ahead and go through the supplies, and I will get everything out of the way real quick. So I'm just going to move everything here off to the side and start with some of the big tools that we're going to need. I just totally moved our mat. I'm so sorry, guys. As you guys, compared to my normal videos, you guys can see a lot more of my workspace than you normally see. You normally just see the little white square here. You know, this memory box is going to take a little bit more space than that. I'm actually just going to stick this down real quick. I'm sorry. It apparently did not want to stick from the last time I did this, so we're going to do it this time. There we go. Okay. Alrighty. So let's go through a couple of the things that you're going to need. The first and foremost thing that you're going to need is you are going to need a 12x12 paper trimmer. Just to let you guys know. And Stampin' Ups, Fiskars, basically anybody's that you have will do the same thing. My Stampin' Up! Trimmer also, our blade comes out, or the mechanism comes off, I should say. And I can replace it with what is now retired, but they had a rotary blade that goes in here. Now, I unfortunately cannot get replacement blades for this anymore. However, I do have a few still in my stash. So I'm going to keep using this until I can't. And I use this, the rotary blade, to cut my chipboard. If you do not have a rotary blade to cut your chipboard, a guillotine trimmer works, or even like your regular paper trimmer, you're just going to have to go over it multiple times, front and back, just to let you know. So if you do not have a rotary trimmer or a guillotine trimmer, or I'm going to tell you, a craft knife also works. Craft knife and cutting mat also work. If you do not have those types of things, that's okay. Your regular paper trimmer will do the job. You are just going to need to use a good blade. You're going to need to do a couple of slices on the front, turn it over, and do a couple of slices on the back, and keep going until you get all the way through your chipboard. Okay, let me get this out of the way. Another item that you are going to need is going to be a Simply Scored scoring tool, or any sort of scoring board. You guys can't see the end of mine, but it is a 12x12 board. And I suggest Stampin' Ups because I love the color of it partially and how they have the markings done. But the Martha Stewart, Score Pal, they all do the same thing. So grab yourself a scoring board. If you don't and you have a paper trimmer that has a scoring blade on it, that also does the trick. Okay, next I'm going to show you guys, I did mention, as well as a paper trimmer or a guillotine trimmer that can cut your chipboard, a regular craft knife and a cutting mat do the same thing. Now, your cutting mat should be probably self-healing. You can find these at Joann's, Michael's, Hobby Lobby, any basic crafting store. This is actually an old one from Creative Memories. Yeah, that tells you guys how old that is. But, actually as a mat, it's really nice. It's got good lines. It's not the biggest one in the world, but it's also not the smallest one in the world. So this also works. Typically the self-healing mats can be found in the sewing section of your crafting store because they are used for a rotary cutter sewing tool that you can purchase as well. So there's that. So I've done most of this kind of work for you already. So we're going to go ahead and put that back. All right, next, I would strongly suggest a ruler. I am using the Tim Holtz Ideology ruler. I actually really like this ruler because it doesn't just have the centering mark, but it also has that, and then you can also have the measuring lines on it as well. So I always like that ruler. As always, a pen or pencil is also necessary. Good for marking things. Just have that one handy. I'm just going to slide that off to the side. A bone folder of your choosing. I have about 5, so if you don't always see this exact bone folder, just know that it is a bone folder of some variety. Again, I have about 5 different kinds of bone folders, and this just happens to be one of them that was handy. Now, I would strongly suggest getting yourself some really strong adhesive, and I am not necessarily talking just glue. Glue takes a little bit too long to dry. I am using score tape from Suk Wang, and I have the 1/4 inch, and I also have the 3/8 of an inch. Again, 1/4 inch and 3/8 of an inch. And I pulled in both of these. I mostly use the 3/8. However, I did use the 1/4 for a few pieces, and so can you. And so I always just have those kind of things just hanging around. If you guys have red line tape, that also works too. You know, that really thick, heavy duty tape that you actually have to cut. Red line tape also works. But this, and Stampin' Up's tear tape does the same thing as this does as well, just so everybody knows. The 3/8 of an inch is not a requirement. You do need at least a 1/4 of an inch. So 1/8 is not going to work. You need at least a 1/4. I use both. Just my personal preference. Okay, so you're going to see here some, and please keep in mind these things can be massively large sheets, but I have some just basic black cardstock here. I'm using Recollections 60-pound cardstock. I do not suggest 80-pound cardstock. Once you hit 80 pounds, it becomes a little bit too stiff. I do suggest the 60-pound cardstock or 70-pound cardstock, just to let you guys know. And you're going to need, for an 8x8, you're going to need about 2.5, maybe 3 sheets of 8.5 by 11 to cut all the pieces that you need. Now, I'm going to go through all of the chipboard pieces that are needed for this project. And I'm actually going to start with the very, very top of the box. And if you remember on my 12x12 memory box, you saw a picture frame that was 5x7 that was covered in black cardstock. Well, I'm going to do the same thing, or at least hopefully do the same thing. However, this time I'm going to do 2 4x4, and I'm trying to offset them just a little bit on top. So you are going to need to make 2 frames that are 4 inches by 4 inches. I actually believe mine are 4x4 1/8. I just used the end of my chipboard. My chipboard, let me pull out a sheet here for you, comes in 12x12 sheets. I mean, it is a true 12x12 sheet. And depending on where you get it, it's medium weight or extra heavy or heavyweight, depending on what you get. Mine measures just about a 1/16 of an inch, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. But that's how thick mine is. And it makes this memory box come out nice and sturdy, and that's really awesome. These are actually just the corners of the leftover pieces. So just to let you guys know, I did not have a lot of scrap in this. So woohoo to that. My frame is done 1/2 inch from the edge. So I used my Tim Holtz Ideology ruler. I went in 1/2 inch, drew a line. I then used my craft knife and a cutting mat to cut it out. If you guys are very proficient at using your Stampin' Trimmer, those also work. Okay. So again, 2 frames that measure 4 inches by 4 inches, or in my case, 4 1/8 by 4 1/8. I was not trimming off 1/8 of an inch. You may not want to choose to trim off 1/8 of an inch either. I wouldn't blame you. Now, you're also going to need a whole bunch of these little teeny tiny pieces here. And in total, you're probably, if you want to make it exactly like mine, you're going to need 15 1/4 by 3 3/4 inch strips. Again, 1/4 by 3 3/4 inches. And you're going to need 15 of them. Now, I have pre-done some of the work for us today, and I've pre-glued together a few of these, and I'll show you guys how I got to that in just a few minutes. But you are going to need 15 of them in total. So I just used scrap cardstock. If you were going to make a 4x6 frame or a 5x7 frame for the top of your box, you are going to want to adjust the length. So if you didn't want to do two 4x4s and you wanted to do a 4x6 or a 5x7, you're going to adjust the length of your piece here. So these pieces here correspond with your frame pieces, and you'll see how that works in just a few minutes. These actually become the edges, and this is actually what raises your frame in order to allow a picture to slide in. So getting all that out of the way, I'm going to go through the base pieces next. You're going to need 2 pieces of cardstock that measure 8 inches by 8 inches squared. And I always mark both pieces. So I wrote big on one of them, and then I wrote really tiny in the corner on the other. You're not going to see it. You might as well write on it, guys. And I always double check mine to make sure mine all line up nice and pretty. If they don't, I need to go back and trim something. I didn't measure 100% correct. So I always go back and I double check. Right now I am squaring up 100% perfect. All right. You are also going to need 2 pieces of chipboard that measure 4 inches by 7 7/8 of an inch. Do not mistake this. Do not go to 7 3/4 and do not go to 8. 7 7/8 of an inch. And you will see why. When you put these all together, it's going to fit. If you do 7 3/4, it's going to be too short. If you do 8 inches exactly, it's going to be too long. So you want 7 7/8 of an inch. You want 2 of those. And then you are going to want 2 pieces that measure 4 by 8 inches. Again, 4 inches tall by 8 inches wide. Make sure all of these things line up with each other. I always just kind of square them up, say, okay, yes, am I good? Am I good? I typically am by the time I get done. Okay, so now that we have all the supplies that you need out of the way, I'm actually going to begin the preparation before the assembly of the box. And a lot of the preparation comes into how do you cut your pieces, that kind of stuff. This is where, unfortunately, it's a little time consuming. I'm going to start with the pieces that need to dry first. And so I showed you guys these little frame pieces here, these little 1/4 inch by 3 3/4 inches that we have here. And I told you were going to need 15 of them if you wanted to make it exactly like mine. If you don't, and you're only going to put 1 frame on there, you really only need 3. Cuts down on cutting time, I will tell you. But here we go. So I am actually taking 4 of these little 1/4 inch by 3 3/4 inches, and I'm actually going to put them all together. So I've done 2 of these full ones already. I want to do one with you. And I glued 2 of them together and 2 of them together. And I'm going to show you guys how to do the 3rd one. I'm using Tombow glue today. Any craft glue that you like works. You're going to cover it up anyways, so I don't see the need. But I just kind of run a bead of glue. Now, if you don't want to use glue, you can also use your score tape, and it would take a 1/4 inch score tape or 1/8 of an inch score tape, whichever one you choose. See, I just ran a bead of glue there, and then I just put mine together. I just stick them together. I like glue because it gives me a little bit of wiggle room. So I'm not the best at always lining things up. And I want to give these things time to dry and become solid. So that's how it makes up my 4th one. And I'm also going to attach my other 3 to the back of one of my frames for you. So figure out which side you want as your top and which side you want as your bottom, especially if it's a 4x6 or a 5x7. At a 4x4, it should be a square, so we shouldn't have to worry. So you can either attach these pieces to your frame with glue, or you can attach them with score tape. I'm going to attach mine today with glue because to me, it gives me a little more wiggle room. And it holds just as well. I mean, I don't bump into mine all that frequently. So I'm going to turn my piece sideways. And what I aim for is I want the very edge, very edge, I don't know if you guys can see that, of my piece. So I line it up with my bottom edge and my side edge here as close as I can get it without going over. And I just kind of press down. Now, I always turn mine to check that I'm not over on the edges and I just don't know it. Again, turn, press down. I'm going to do this 2 more times. So I'm going to do this along the bottom edge as well. There we go. And 1 more time. Apparently I picked the bottom edge already. My bad. Again, my frame is 4x4, so it doesn't really matter what side I pick as my bottom and my top and all that kind of stuff. So, okay. I've got that all lined up right there, and I do want to make sure that it's on the edge and not over. Same thing with this one. Just at the edge, but not over the edge. Okay. Now, I'm going to be repeating that process probably at the end of this segment on the second frame with my thicker ones. Now, what the thicker ones are going to allow me to do is actually, if I put these down, maybe you can actually kind of see them. It's going to raise the frame up enough for me to actually have a 2-tiered frame system. So one will fit in on top of another. And I chose 4 instead of 3 to go up just to make sure I clear that when it comes to paper and extra things once I get everything covered and all that kind of stuff. But you'll see that much more is later on. So what we've done so far is we've glued together all of these pieces, and then I've glued the edge on the single frame. Again, if you're only doing 1 frame, you really don't need to do 4 unless you want massively extra dimension on them. Okay? We're going to set all this stuff aside to dry, and we're going to start prepping everything else. I'm going to close up my glue. Now, you're going to want to cut your cardstock, your black cardstock, your black 60, 70 pound cardstock. I don't know how in the world I get all this stuff all over my mat. There we go. Your black 60 or 70 pound cardstock, you're going to want to cut these into strips and pieces. Now, you're going to need 16 pieces that measure 1 inch by 8 inches. Again, 1 inch by 8 inches. This is where the 8.5 and 11 come into really big handy. Cut off 1/2 inch on the 8.5 inch side, and then just cut down 11 strips. Okay? That's what you're going to need for that one. You're going to need 16 of these. Again, I repeat, 16 1 by 8 inch pieces. I have pre-prepped quite a few of mine, so you're only going to see 2 of them here today. Then you're going to want to cut 4 pieces that measure 1 inch by 4 inches. Again, 4 pieces that measure 1 inch by 4 inches. And then I do have 4 of those. Those have already been prepped already. Same process for prepping, by the way. And then you're going to want 4 pieces that measure 4 1/8 of an inch by 1 inch. Again, 4 1/8 of an inch by 1 inch. You're going to want 4 of those. Now that all comes out of about 2 pieces of paper, just to let 2 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper, just to let you know. The third piece is to actually cover our frames. That's why I said you're going to need about 3 pieces. When you're prepping, so I have cut and I have already pre-scored these at 1/2 inch. So once you have the 1 inch, you're going to want to score each piece at 1/2 of an inch. So at 1/2 inch, you're going to put a score line. We're going to fold these in half, grab your bone folder, gently reinforce your folds. Okay. If you would like to make your hinges a little bit wider, that's okay. Just remember you need to score halfway in the middle of them. Now, I use 3/8 of an inch. You can use a 1/4 inch. You're going to want to make sure you apply adhesive to both sides. Where do I apply my adhesive? Let me find the end of my adhesive. Here we go. I apply my adhesive right at the edge. I want to leave, a little bit of room before the fold. And because I'm using 3/8 of an inch, that pretty much means right at the edge. Now, this here is just it's actually a cornering tool. That's the funny thing. It's called the Perfect Trim Ruler, and it miters corners for you, but I also realized it makes a great cutting surface. So you want to make sure your score tape goes from edge to edge as much as you can. Do it on both sides. Again, I repeat, both sides. And again, I just line mine up. The edge of a ruler also works just as well, just let everybody know. I just like my corner trim ruler, my perfect trim ruler, because it works. It's a mitering tool, but it's actually really great for that too, so. All right. As I said, the end of basically any piece of plastic works. Need to do the other side. Now, the same process that I'm going through here, do this on all of your black pieces. There we go. And all these black pieces are called hinges. So do these on all your hinges. I probably should have told you guys that earlier. Yes, this is what are called hinges. Your black pieces are all called hinges. Or trim, depending on how you guys want to look at that. Now, after I have applied all of my tape, I do take my bone folder and I do run it over the tape just one more time. And the reason why I do that is it ensures stickage on your cardstock, and it also allows the topping or the backing to your adhesive to be pulled off easier. So once you have prepped all 16 pieces of your 1 inch by 8 inches by scoring it down the half and adding, folding it in half then, and burnishing it, and then adding your adhesive, do that to all 16 pieces of your 1 by 8 inches, as well as all of your 1 by 4 and 1 by 4 1/8. So you guys can see here, I have pre-done all of this. Nobody wanted to see me do that 16 times. Okay? All right. So we are all ready for the next step. All right, so you know how we went and glued those pieces to the frame? Well, now we're gonna glue the rest of it to the frame. I have got like random things of string all over my desk here. So I'm actually going to take my glue and I'm going to glue it to my second frame. Again, know which side is up, which side is down. Again, glue allows me a little more wiggle room, time, because I am not always the best at placing things the first time around. I do have to say thank you to one of my YouTube watchers that gave me a tip when using score tape. She was very kind. She watched the video on my mini legal pad tutorial. And, oops, come on, push that up just a little bit. There we go. My mini legal pad tutorial. And she did say that if you added, I believe it was, oh yeah, if you add a glue stick on top of the score tape, it does give you a little more wiggle room, but then it still holds as hard. And I was like, whoa, that's really cool. I didn't know that. Now I know that. So, hey, see what I know. And last one. I just want to make sure these are glued, they stick, and they've got plenty of time to dry. So once you have those glued on, don't worry, all of this extra stuff here is all covered. So you have both sides glued on, all ready to go. All right, in this video, we did go over the supplies that you needed, and then we did start our prep. And our prep included cutting our chipboard, attaching our pieces to our frames, as well as preparing and cutting, or cutting and preparing, I guess I should say, all of your hinges. This stuff is all the prep work, and unfortunately, it does take a little bit of time. But once you have all this stuff done, everything else is going to go nice and fast for us. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you would like to see the next video, please go ahead and watch it. And always go ahead and subscribe to see more videos like this. I am Mel from Cardstock Concoctions. Please join me for part 2 of our 8x8 memory box. Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye.